All right. LaBagh Woods, an interview update on the Chicago Ornithological Society Lower North Branch LaBagh project.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our breakout room. Before we get right into it, even though that's the line I'm supposed to say, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about Jeff in case you didn't already know. He is the heart and the soul of our project at LaBagh. He is the visionary, the planner, the inspirer in chief, the advocate, and the tenacious crusader for LaBagh. He leads with a light touch and by his example. He knows more about what is at LaBagh than absolutely anyone. He cares deeply not only about what happens there, but about each of our volunteers. Plus, most importantly, he makes work days a lot of fun. COS is very fortunate to have Jeff as the leader of our restoration efforts at LaBagh. Thank you, Jeff. So with the pandemic this year, was the LaBagh team able to get any shrubs into the ground?
We did, but it was sort of touch and go, as those of you who work at LaBagh know. And in April and May, when there was a moratorium on the work, it was not clear at all if we would get to put any shrubs into the ground this year. But we did in the fall. You can see some photos from September 27th, 2020. Our spring planting had to be canceled, and we moved all of those shrubs from the spring into our fall planting workdays. And over those 4 fall workdays, 4 crews that were limited to only 25 volunteers per workday, and understand that that's a difference from some planting workdays in the past. We had as many as 45, 55, 60 people show up to help us plant our shrubs. Anyway, we were limited to 25 volunteers per workday, and those 25 volunteers on 4 different workdays put a total of 261 new shrubs and some canopy trees into the ground in 4 critical areas of LaBagh Woods.
So how many shrubs have you now been put into LaBagh?
Many shrubs have been put into LaBagh. In 6 years of planting, we have organized 36 planting workdays now, and we planted 1,000 shrubs by October 30th of 2016, and we planted 2,000 shrubs by November 5th, 2017, and we were at 2,500 shrubs into the ground over all the years that we were doing our work by November 3rd of 2018. We hit 3,000 shrubs.
Got it.
October 20th of 2019. And on October 5th of this year, in a year where the pandemic hamstrung us in pretty much all the restoration we were trying to accomplish, the LaBagh team planted shrub number 3,314 into the ground. Hats off to the LaBagh team for such great work over the last couple of years.
So if the LaBagh team has planted 3,314 native shrubs and subcanopy trees, how are those plantings coming along?
Amazing would be the short and the long of it. We're doing really, really well. And I'm just really excited to share with everybody that this year we inventoried 64% of the planting cages we have at LaBagh Woods. And we are trying to inventory all of those plantings, which is a lot, at least once every other year. That's our goal. Based on our most recent surveys and doing the math, which Linda, Martin, and Jamie are really taking the lead on and getting that done, of the 3,314 native shrubs and subcanopy trees that we have planted at LaBagh by us, just over 70% of those shrubs and trees are still surviving, and most are thriving, like this black elderberry that we planted in 2015. We record and manage all of this planting data with our private database to track our planting observations. And we try to make those observations at least biennially, which means every other year, by as many volunteers as we can get to help. So if you know your native shrubs and you want to help us inventory, we would be enthusiastic to have you join us.
So just what are these native shrubs and trees that are being planted at LaBagh?
Well, at the moment, we are planting native shrubs from a list that, in case you don't know it, this has to be approved by the Forest Preserve of Cook County ecologist, who for our area is Deborah Antlitz, from our region. And it includes right now about 40 native species, such as blue beech, buttonbush, one of my favorites, blue fruited or silky dogwood, American hazelnut, my favorite of all the hawthorns, cockspur hawthorn, dwarf honeysuckle, wahoo, witch hazel, spicebush, yellow honeysuckle, nine bark, American plum, chokecherry, wafer ash, black currant, which again, one of my favorites, I don't know why, wild gooseberry, Illinois rose, black elderberry, blatternut, maple leaf viburnum. We love the viburnums. Nannyberry, we'd love for our downy arrowwood to do better, but there's a disease going around right now that's killing it all, and prickly ash.
So where do you get these native shrubs and trees?
That is also a good question, Katie. And as you and I both learned earlier in our careers doing this volunteer work, it's not as simple as going to the garden center and placing an order for some plants. First of all the plants we put in the ground have to be grown from seed that is sourced within about 15 miles of LaBagh Woods along the north branch of the Chicago River. This is mandatory. And that's right, it's about 15 miles is all we get to look for the seeds. And second, we have to find those native shrubs and trees, which is no easy task. When we find a population, we have to hope we can get to them at exactly the moment when they have mature seed that we can harvest. And not all the shrubs we want are easily found on the north branch of the Chicago River, and some don't produce viable seed from year to year. Sometimes we miss our window to collect the needed seed. The very reason we want to plant some of these shrubs is to provide birds food. And guess what? Sometimes the birds get to the seed before we get to. Next, when we get the seed, by the way, this is blue fruited dogwood berries, we have to mail or deliver the seed collected to our grower. They ask for a minimum that we provide about 500 seeds for each species before they'll commit to growing them for us. Sometimes we aren't able to find that many seeds, and sometimes they'll grow them for us, and sometimes they are not able to. And sometimes the seeds we send don't germinate for a host of reasons. And then finally, in the process, our grower manages our shrubs to a size that they believe is appropriate for transplanting success, but they're still very small. And when ready, we pick those shrubs up on the day before we hope to put them into the ground. It's about a 90-mile round trip, and it takes a large vehicle to transport anywhere between 70 and the most that we've planted in a day is about 150 native shrubs. We are very thankful to have access to a vehicle that allows us to do this, aren't we, Katie?
Yes, we are. So tell me about what a typical shrub planting day is like once those plants get delivered to LaBagh.
Another great question. And it's, again, one that is not easily answered. It's a complicated and much choreographed dance, often months in the making. Planting workdays begin months before we get any plants to LaBagh Woods. It starts with us building a plan. You can see Judy, Katie, and I doing one of those planning days. And we have to figure out what plants are available to us based on what seeds have grown. And we have to figure out those, excuse me, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. And the example that I'd like to share with you all is right now for next spring, those shrubs were ordered last fall. And recently, Katie, you just placed the order for the plants that we will be putting into the ground in the fall of 2021 and the spring of 2022. You just made that order. Mm-hmm. And we're usually thinking and planning a full year ahead of when any shrub finds itself at LaBagh Woods. Once our shrub inventory is known, sites are selected, and we must prep those sites for planting. And again, when you see, pretty much if you see Judy, Katie, and Jeff walking around, that's often what we're doing. And this can require removal of buckthorn or other invasive shrubs, applying herbicide to try to prevent those invasives from growing back or resprouting. And once our native shrubs are in the ground, as you'll see a little later. And then next comes a very specific siting of each individual shrub. I mean, with a flag, building an enclosure, and putting that around where we want to put the shrubs, because deer browse is one of the most challenging problems that we have with this LaBagh project. Once we've sited each specific plant, we go there with an auger and we drill those holes into the ground inside the planting cages. And those holes are into which each individual shrub will be planted. And if you don't know this, there are some areas of LaBagh where the clay, if dry, is hard as a rock. And sometimes it can take many hours and much effort and leave our volunteers very weary after the effort of drilling holes. Now, the photo you see above here of Rich, Dennis, and Dave drilling a hole, that was in an area that was beautiful, loamy soil down by the river, and it was an easy hole to drill. Then on the day before and the morning of any work day, the logistics of getting all the tools, equipment, shrubs, mulch, and water to our work site is a really big job. And we are so lucky that we have Dennis and Linda Martin, who are all too happy to do it for us, and they have a truck that's perfect for the project. Pre-pandemic, they would also almost always prepare a break time meal or snack for us. And then at workday's end, we have to return everything back to whence it came. And usually it's Linda and Dennis doing that for us, which is simply fantastic. For our planting day, detailed plans are written, usually by yours truly, and volunteers are now solicited and broken into teams. Team leaders have usually been pre-assigned, and the 4 main goals of a planting day is then explained to all. What are those 4 goals? Water the holes that have been drilled and prep them. We can't have round holes for our plants. They have to be squared off. Come to a work day and you'll learn why. Put the plants into the ground. And we have a sort of a very specific process that has to be done to get them so we can get the highest survivability rate. We mulch the plants if necessary. That's to hold water in and to keep other things from growing right around it. And then we water the plants again.
So are we done?
Don't we wish we were done? After the plants are into the ground, next comes monitoring and watering after the workday. So if you look at that September 13th, 2020 picture with Paul and a couple of volunteers, they were putting in some honeysuckle, native honeysuckle there. And about 2 days later, it looked like all the honeysuckle that we had planted in that location had died. Thankfully, Linda and Dennis had noticed that, and we immediately rushed out, and literally of the 67 shrubs we put into the ground that day, we had to give water to like 65 of them because we had that big dry spell this summer. And then after we do the monitoring, then come 2 of my least favorite tasks after all the work that we do. And the first one is weeding. Our plants are small when we get them, and they're desperately trying to set the roots, often in difficult clay soil. They can easily find themselves outcompeted by established herbaceous natives or even the invasive species we tried to kill before we set up the planting location. And every one of those native shrubs, in my mind, is a $20 bill. So we have to keep that happening by pulling one weed at a time. It's tedious and difficult work. But as you can see with that September 5th, 2020 slide, we can easily, that's 5 cages that they did weeding, and that was over 100 pounds of weeds that they pulled. And then another one of my least favorite things is the repair and rebuilding of the cages. We have hundreds of dead ash at LaBagh and some dying oaks as well. And trees are constantly falling on our planting cages. And the Forest Preserve of Cook County has made it very clear. It is our responsibility to remove the tree fall from our planting cages and repair and rebuild the cages and make them look good. They're not even sure they're 100% jumping up and down to have cages at LaBagh. We can't make them look like crap after tree fall.
Well, then are we done?
That more or less covers the effort it takes to get native shrubs into the ground, Katie. And those native shrubs are making real our dream of providing migrating and breeding birds a chance to take flight from LaBagh Woods. Planting native shrubs is one of the most critical initiatives we have at LaBagh Woods, but it is not the only task that we have to accomplish to maintain a healthy site that is attractive to the rare, endangered, and even common migrating birds that come through LaBagh every spring and fall.
So what other tasks do need to be done at LaBagh?
Good question. And I know you know the answers to some of this because you do it with us all the time. It's a never-ending list. I have like 35 things on my task list right now. And some of our other main tasks include birding, naturally, which means we get to lead bird walks. There's trash cleanup. You go to LaBagh, please don't leave your face mask or your gloves. It's not something we really look forward to cleaning up. We have to deal with rule breakers, and sadly, there's all kinds of things people do that we really don't want. We had an illegal fire that was still burning there this year. We have people think that the Forest Preserve is a place to bury their pets, and we have pet cemeteries all the time. Illegal dumping. We have bike riding on the dirt footpaths. We have poachers and motorized vehicles. And we have people on the north side of LaBagh who think LaBagh is a great place to dump their yard waste, and which often brings invasive species into LaBagh. Yes, once we even ran into people who were doing work with firearms and target practicing, and regularly people dump pets at LaBagh. We're always removing invasive herbaceous plants. You can see a couple of different things here. You see Maureen and I doing sweet clover removal. The good news is from 2016 to 2018, the size of the sweet clover has gotten much smaller. You can see a group of people from one of the Chicago high schools doing garlic mustard removal. And then those are the sixth graders from North Park Elementary School removing lily of the valley, which is now one of our most pervasive invasives that we're trying to get rid of. And we can't just pull them out of the ground because they'll disturb the soil and create more problems for us. So they have to be picked at the dirt level very carefully, and it's tedious work, and it can take up to 7 years before we exhaust the plants, the native lily of the valley. And we're always fundraising. We've had 3 main fundraisers since we started this project. Most people aren't aware, but the LaBagh team gets almost no government funding for the restoration activities and the native shrub planting projects we do at LaBagh Woods. Nothing from Cook County, nothing from the state, and certainly very little from the federal government. And we've raised about $50,000. We've spent about $50,000 so far on the work that we've done through 2020. And we raised almost all of that with one significant fund, a government funding early in our project history. And because of COVID-19, our planned 2021 biennial fundraiser has been pushed to, I say May, but it could be April of 2022. We also do restoration work days with school groups, and we have them out pre-COVID, probably a half a dozen, 8 times a year. And working with the school groups is actually one of the most joyous things we can do. And we work with everywhere from 4th graders from North Park Elementary to DePaul University students as freshmen who come and take the ecology program that's offered there. We have to do collecting and dispersing of native herbaceous seeds. It's not just shrubs we plant. We have to have an herbaceous layer that's healthy as well. It's one of the biggest issues that we have to keep working with at LaBagh to be successful. There's also, every other year, we have to help the Forest Preserve Cook County ecologist, Deborah, write the annual LaBagh Woods Ecology Management Schedule, which gives all the restoration activities, it's legitimacy. If it's not in the ecology management schedule, we can't do it. We do trail building and maintenance, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner there, that was us just this Sunday, building, or not building, but sort of reinforcing a trail by the trestle at LaBagh Woods with both logs and cookies. Cookies are the rounds of the trees. And then we do local school and community outreach, education, and we do both public and private presentations, such as the ones that are here, and just like this one. We also have to monitor and clean up LaBagh's 15 bird nest boxes. We have to show volunteers our love and appreciation, which candidly is usually food and drink. Plus, we like to give recognition for outstanding service because we really have a fantastic group of volunteers. Since the LaBagh project began in October of 2014, more than 2,000 volunteers have shared at least 2 or 3 hours of their time with us as volunteers. And some of those volunteers donate 40 to 500 or more hours of their time a year, each and every year, for LaBagh restoration work. And since 2015, 3 or 4 volunteers have been recognized annually with the COS, Chicago Ornithological Society, Bird Conservation Award for their outstanding commitment, leadership, and examples as LaBagh restoration volunteers. With that award, they are inducted into an elite group of private volunteers we refer to as the Order of the Buckthorn. By the way, we'll be awarding this Order of the Buckthorn to 4 people tonight, right after this session is done. So these volunteers, along with all who volunteer with us, are the snow angels for LaBagh Woods. They make what happens happens. They are the love that we need for LaBagh. And did I mention fundraising? I'll mention it again because in case I forgot, we are probably going to come up short between now and when we have our next fundraiser in spring of 2022. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint, for any of you who are able to help us. And not finally, but tonight, last, we have the project of exploring and inventorying the native wildlife of LaBagh via iNaturalist. And it's a big job, and unfortunately, my numbers are completely not being shown right now, so I can't give it to you exactly. But my recollection is that we have now seen 1,235 species at LaBagh Woods, and that compromises 7,829 individual observations that have been made by 213 different people, observers, and we've had 1,166 people help us identify those different species at LaBagh. There's a lot of stuff there, and just in case you're wondering, 90% of the species that are in LaBagh that we have identified actually belong there. Our list right now includes 127 invasive species, but that means that all the rest are native, and we have eliminated some of the invasives from the site thanks to the work that we've done. And I just happened to pick one thing that I saw this September. A large ash tree fell down up on what we refer to as Red Oak Hill, and on it there was this golden eye lichen, which I put up, and I was kind of, oh, that's cool. And I heard from one of the lichen specialists at the Field Museum who said this is what he did some of his PhD work on, and it's only recently been found in the Midwest, and this is one of the very few observations that have been found in Illinois. And it was really exciting to hear that from a guy who specializes in that. And I found it just by looking on a rainy day. And they don't last long. This lichen was good for like 3 days, and then it was gone. It shriveled up, and it was not to be seen again for the rest of the year.
Oh, Jeff, that's absolutely amazing, especially seeing that map with all the sightings and observations. But I wonder, can we save it all? I'm thinking probably not. And does it matter? Well, we certainly think it does. And that's why we've decided to think globally, but act locally and make a difference that matters at LaBagh and for our beloved spaceship Earth.
The eyes of the next generation are indeed watching us. And I need to ask you all, what example are we setting? So let's all give a gentle kiss to spaceship Earth and all its inhabitants. Let's consider sharing just a bit more love and respect with our planet because it deserves it. And maybe for some of you who aren't already volunteers at LaBagh Woods, maybe you can join our team of volunteers. Whoops, what happened? Maybe you can join our team of volunteers at LaBagh Woods. You will be enthusiastically welcomed, no matter if you volunteer with us just once or every month. Because unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thanks, everybody.